Hi, Sunday chat time. So this Phantom that I'm working on, the 148th, is this scheme. But this is the one that I was saying I'm sort of thinking of changing it a bit to be a Reno style scheme. So while it does look very, very nice, I just feel like adding a bit of sponsor stickers and making it look a little bit more like a racer, which I think could be quite interesting. Now, okay, so I've been masking and spraying. I'll get to some of these things now. It's pretty close to getting there. I've left off that front windscreen so far because I still haven't found that part. But I did glue on the canopy pieces. There's still a lot of masking to be done. So actually that's the slowdown now. And of course, once I'm finished with that area, I then need to reverse mask that so that I don't mess up that area. Now on this scheme, it is gloss blue. But one of the variations that you can do, and I might do on a part of it, you can either spray clear blue over your gloss blue to give a little bit of depth, or you can do it in a chrome and spray clear blue over the chrome till it becomes a candy apple blue. Or you can, what was the other effect that I was thinking? Or you can spray not such a dark blue and then spray the clear blues, which will darken it up but give more candy apple effect. So my thought at the moment is to do some parts in the dark, the closest that I can find to that blue, and maybe wing outer panels, do chrome and then clear blue. I'm not sure if I should do two-tone blue, and I'm a little bit hesitant about breaking the lines too much. We'll see. I will mess around with that. There is an anti-dazzle panel, which is very difficult to see on there, but I think that will add to it. So we've got that. And what was the other? So if you look here, on the in between those panel lines, it looks like it's gold. Now there is gold. Sorry, that is gold, and that tip is gold. But inside those lines, it looks gold, which I quite like. But I don't think it's actually gold. I think it's just because of the way this was sprayed, with a little bit of brown. Clear brown possibly, which gave the shiny metal a little bit of a goldish effect just in those recesses. But I'm sort of liking the idea of a gold line in there. So I'm playing with the idea of how to actually put that in. A pinstripe gold, apart from the gold on the edges there and there. I'm hoping that this long decal works, and I guess that'll be part of my decision on how much sponsor sticker to use, because if that messes up, then all I've got is a blue aircraft. Anyway, quite a nice one, and the second and third Phantoms will get at least something close to their box schemes, which I will show you. So a lot of masking, which, to be honest, sometimes it's better to just spray the area and go over than having to mask, because I need to reverse mask now as well. So the tail planes and this area involves quite a lot of masking, but anyway, it's half done now. This caused me a little bit of grief. And the reason for that is that you see the cutouts for the swivel of this canopy. It means that that piece there has only a very, very tiny amount of plastic left there, and it cracked in half, or it was cracked in half by the pressure of the sprues in the box. So I had to glue the two individual pieces into there, and this side's one is slightly proud, and this side's one is sort of in line exactly, a little bit recessed over there. And yet the pins are in position. So I think what's happened is Hasegawa didn't mold it perfectly, because as far as I can see, I've got everything well aligned. So I think this sort of caught me out. I should have taken those two pins off this canopy so that that piece could perfectly align with the curvature. It is subtle, but it's mildly annoying, because when you've sort of worked a process to almost to perfection, and yet you get an imperfect result, it's like, well, okay, you should have done something a little bit better. And the something better was to preempt the fact that that middle piece would not actually be aligned perfectly. But it's okay. It's not a big deal. It's not like this is a perfect Phantom build. It's a nice one, but not a perfect one. This was the one where it's got a resin cockpit which was already built previously, and it's not the best of fits inside this fuselage. And one of the reasons I don't get involved with resin cockpits is I just really don't feel like filing away on resin pieces to get them to fit inside a fuselage. But maybe these days on average they do fit better, I don't know. So the kit ones, I've been working on the kit ones. This is for the second and third Phantoms. So what I've done there is just a black ink onto the grey painted surface. So that's like a really, really quick and easy way of bringing detail. It's essentially just a wash, but with an ink. It does give those panels a blacker effect, and the more you go over it, the more of a black effect you get. Okay, you won't see much of that panel, but you can see these two. So they'll still get a little bit more attention, and some areas look better than others. And I know that those green CRTs are not perfectly representative of the real thing, but I just like the effect. I just made them a bit brighter green than they would be. And so that's just grey painted gloss. It's got the ink, so overall the effect is still fairly gloss. On this top section you'll notice that it just seemed to overall blacken compared to some of the lower sections where you can see a bit more detail. So I will still do a silver dry brush. I don't think it quite comes out as well in this video. I'll take some photos and put up a post as well. Sort of the intermediate effects. I don't think this is quite coming out perfectly in the video. That's like the cheap and nasty way of getting a visual effect that looks fairly okay, because I'm just not into doing detailed cockpits and researching, spending a lot of time doing that part of the model when you're really not going to see much of it. On some aircraft I will do more than others, but in this case I just want something that looks well enough, looks good enough, but hasn't been researched. That's the green that I just used on those little CRT displays. A very cheap water-based paint there, and then I put a bit of, so once that's dry I can run the little ring of ink around it, which gives it that blackened surround, and then also a dot of the floor wax just to seal that and give it a bit of glossiness. So I was spraying, preempting for this one, but I had some other pieces, so I was starting on the other pieces with this Alclad chrome and polished aluminiums and so on, and I was spraying and I was getting a very interesting effect, sort of like a speckled metallic black. So you've got your black base color, gloss black, and normally with this Alclad, you know, 1 or 2 passes and it's pretty good, but you do get a different visual effect from looking in the sun and looking in shade, because the sun sort of shines right through that layer. But anyway, looking in the shade, I could see that I just wasn't getting much metal look. It had a bit of particle, but not much. And I gave it more of a go, and I looked at the what I had in the airbrush, and it looked fine, but it seems that possibly over time more of the particle got used, and these were second-hand bottles that I got. So I'm not sure exactly how this happens, that maybe more of the particle got used and what was left over was less and less and less particle, so that you could spray a layer and get quite an interesting sort of midnight black sparkly effect, which I might use on some aircraft at some stage, but these ones I wanted to be, you know, this very bright metal. So I had to go and change to another bottle and assume that those particular bottles had a lot of their particle used, which is interesting. I hadn't really realized that before. Just on the top of the bottle here, you can also see the nice brightness of that metal. Okay, so another thing to mention about this, of course, the Phantom isn't this bright. It isn't chromed. But in this case, I'm going to allow it to be, of course, it's still going to get some weathering, a little bit of weathering, but I am going to allow it to be quite bright. And the reason for that is that this scheme really is something which I am allowing to be a very polished up, very bright Reno style racing scheme. So it's okay. A nice gloss blue, a nice chrome, little bit of weathering in the panel lines, bit of possibly browning. I'll see what I'm actually going to use there. I want a little bit of interest, but I don't want to look like it's an aircraft that's been in much service. So I guess there will be quite a number of hours masking these canopies during these next few days. I'll paint the front windscreen separately, and I'll just put something here to block that off. So that's developing. Oh, yes, I had to do a fair amount of masking to do that. I sort of hadn't pre-planned well enough, so when I did the half, here, I didn't realize actually at that time that there was also these bits, so sort of ended up having to mask quite a bit more than usual. One of you was asking about the sanding down of the rivets and suggested a sanding stick. You have to be careful with a sanding stick. You can make it work, but a sanding stick will put all of its pressure onto a single line, so that relies on you using your hand to manually do the correct curvature each time, as opposed to one of those little, it's not this one because this is quite a heavy but you get the point. Those other ones that I showed you, you can control that with your hand. So with your fingers pressure and with the fact that it can press in a little bit, you get a much more even wearing away of that surface. You still need to visually check, okay, it's still a bit higher there, do a bit more there. The actual ones which I use when it's still got the high rivet, so you have a lot of sanding to do. I could be using 300, 360, but you need to be careful that you're not going down onto the surface. And if you do go down onto the surface, you just touch in between rivet lines and you happen to scratch your surface a little bit with a 360, no problem. Don't need to worry about it. Just don't keep on that area. So just wear down your rivets with a 360, move to 400, move to 600. That's sort of what I'm doing most of it with. And of course I'm just going soft as I get closer to what it is right now, which is like that. Good enough. It's got all of its detail ready so that for a final sanding will bring out that detail. I don't really use more than 600 there. I think even a worn 400 is sort of what I use. I've got 4 pieces of sandpaper which end up being the sort of perfect sanding for that particular stage of the sandpaper's life. So this, it's difficult for me to judge, but I would say a 20th of a millimeter is left on here. So I need to do all of my final coloration and then do the sanding. Now I did mention that this method works well when your final paint colors are different from your base plastic color, which in this case is not that much, which means that when I finally sand my rivets, you're going to get either a subtle view or quite a blatant view. I've got one aircraft which I can bring down from the ceiling, Heinkel 177, where the plastic color and the paint color are different enough that having sanded through, you get a very strong visual effect, and probably way too strong, but very interesting. So I'll show you that. This one will be subtle, obviously. The blue and the grays, so there's the plastic color and that blue, so that will shine through much better. When I say shine through, I mean it'll visually, the sanded down detail will come through better. Now, so I need to create a bit of color variation on the blues and on the grays, but I can't really do that with the airbrush because the airbrush is going to break the scale effect. At the moment the scale effect is being enhanced quite nicely by the sheer number of panels, rivet squares in there, which makes you realize how large this piece is compared to this, for instance, which has nothing, and hence you get no real visual effect of the scale of this piece. But if you go and spray sort of feathered pieces over there, it just doesn't look good enough. So this will be hand painted with something like a bit of a wash, ensuring that I keep somewhat of a jagged edge, and I'll show that. No, I don't mean a jagged edge, I mean keeping it to rivet lines, squares, not a flow pattern. We don't want a feathered edge on that, but I don't want it very strong either, so it'll be an interesting sort of effect there. Won't be ink. Ink will be too harsh on this. It won't. I don't think it's going to be the better quality acrylic paints. I've got a feeling the end result is going to be achieved with the lower quality arts and crafts paints. I'll try and take a video as I'm working on that and see if it's brings out the effect well enough. If you're planning on going down the route of doing some of these sanding techniques, I would say just collect yourself, if you don't already have some of the old Airfix kits, to just use as practice builds for that. I think there's enough of them out there. Usually the Warbirds, Hurricane, the Blenheim's a good one. The Mustang I don't think had rivet detail like that, and I don't think the Spitfire had much either. So I think Hurricane and Blenheim are two good options. Now this one, what I wanted to show about this is it does actually have raised detail, but only a little bit, which you're not going to see very well here. I'll hold that up as close as I can. So there's enough detail so that I think what I might do with this one is I will treat it in the same manner with that same method. I'll spray this silver. I will do a clear coat over that to protect the silver. I will do a floor wax coat over that to protect against too much sanding going through the silver as well. I don't know what scheme this is going to be yet, but whatever scheme it gets, I'll then do a light sanding with Warn 600. Because all you want to do is wear away enough on those raised edges. In this case, you're not trying to remove the raised detail. You're only just trying to break through your paint layer so that you get a visual effect. And that's what you can try on your first builds, is have an underlying layer which, depending on how much you sand, will bring out that much of that underlying color, but you mustn't sand enough to bring it out on the surface, and shine through your final layer. If you go silver, just be aware you may be having a bright silver on top of a camo paint job. So if you don't want that, just pre-plan exactly what you do want shining through. If it's more of a medium gray, and depending on your plastic color, so if this one is already medium grey, well, then you don't need to do anything. Just carry on painting your model up as usual. Put on your final clear coat and everything, and then do a bit of sanding with the Warn 600 or Fresh 600. But I do recommend practicing that on older models first. So at the edge here, there's a number of these things which you won't want to touch. You won't want to go anywhere near with sandpaper. You don't want to damage that detail. So it's really only on certain areas. I think it's nice enough to play with. So, you know, even if you don't take it seriously, just trial models with that method. That'll be good. These are so that's the black ink which I use. And as I was saying, I do have multiple bottles of these so that one of them I could thin down a bit, because at full strength it'll give you way more black than that. So if you are in a position to be using inks, you know, do a fair bit of testing, and it behaves differently on different things. On a matte surface, it's just going to really sink into everything.